Today's book is a biography called Manfish, a story of Jacques Cousteau. What do you think a manfish might be? Jennifer Byrne wrote this biography, and Eric Poiberet is the illustrator. What do you notice on the front cover? Why do you think the illustrator put this picture in a circle? The person that's swimming is Jacques Cousteau. Let's read to find out more. Bubbles rising through the silence of the sea. Silvery beads of breath from a man deep, deep down in a strange and shimmering ocean land of swaying plants and fantastic creatures. A manfish, swimming, diving into the unknown, exploring underwater worlds. No one had ever seen, and no one could ever have imagined. Our story starts many years before in France with a little baby boy born under the summer sun. His parents named him Jacques. From the very beginning, little Jacques loved water. The way it felt on his hands, his face, his body, and water made him wonder. He wondered why ships floated, why he floated, and why rocks sank. One day, Jacques read a story about a man who hid underwater by breathing through a long tube. Jacques tried it and discovered it was impossible. He dreamed that someday he would be able to breathe underwater for real. At night, Jacques dreamed he could fly, with the birds among the clouds, his arms stretched out like wings. Jacques spent his days playing, experimenting, and creating. He wrote little books that he illustrated with his own drawings, and he was fascinated by machines. He studied blueprints and built a model of a crane that was as tall as he was and actually worked. Jacques was fascinated by machines. What does it mean to be fascinated by something? Why might Jacques have been fascinated by machines? Movies fascinated Jacques too. He wanted to know how they were made, how cameras worked, and how chemicals made pictures appear in the film. Jacques saved his allowance penny by penny until he had enough to buy a small home movie camera. The first thing he did was take it apart and put it back together. Then he began to film everything around him. He put his brother, cousins, parents, and friends in his movies. He dressed up as a villain with a painted-on mustache and made some very villainous films. Jacques was always the star, the director, the writer, and usually the cameraman. What do you know about Jacques already? Sometimes the interests a person has as a child change or influence his whole life. How does Jacques' love of machines make a difference in his life? Think about it takes a machine to make a movie. When Jacques finished school, he joined the French Navy. His ship sailed all around the world, and everywhere he went, he filmed what he saw. In China, he filmed men catching fish with their bare hands. They held their breath underwater for many minutes. Jacques wondered what that would be like. One day, at a beach, a friend gave Jacques a pair of goggles with rubber frames and glass to look through. Jacques wore them into the ocean. Beneath the water, he was surrounded by silvery green forests of sea plants and fish he had never seen before. Everything was silent and shimmering. It was a whole new world. When he came up, he saw cars, people, buildings, and telephone poles. Once again, he went below into the magical underwater world. At that moment, Jacques knew his life changed forever. His eyes had been opened to the wonders of the sea. Think about these events in Jacques' life. How did they affect him later? Think about that he loves the sea, and he loves to make movies, and he loves machines. What do you think he's going to do? Jacques and his friends Philippe and Didi began to dive together. They experimented to see how long they could stay underwater and how deep they could go. Jacques created a waterproof case for his camera to film the amazing kingdom he and his friends were exploring beneath the surface. They made rubber suits to keep themselves warm and flippers to help them kick better. But Jacques wanted to stay down longer than just one breath at a time. He realized he needed to take more air with him, enough air to explore the mysterious depths and vast expanses of the ocean, to swim through the sea as free as a fish. He wanted to become a man-fish, and he began to work on just how to do it. On a warm summer day, Jacques stepped into the blue Mediterranean Sea with his new invention. He called it the aqua lung, because aqua means water, and our lungs are the part of our body that holds the air we breathe. Below the surface, Jacques swam and glided and dove. He did flips and somersaults. He stood upside down on one finger and laughed bubbles into the sea. Jacques could breathe beneath the water. Now he could swim across miles of ocean, his body feeling what only scales had felt, his eyes seeing what only fish had seen. The water made him feel like he was flying, just like in his dreams. Jacques had done it. He had become a man-fish. What are some of the ways that Jacques and his friends used their creativity and determination to meet their goals? Jacques was ready to explore the oceans of the world. He needed a boat and found a big old wooden Navy ship named Calypso. In a year, he turned it from a warship into an explorer ship. Jacques, Philippe, and Didi gathered a crew, their aqualungs, their hopes, and their dreams, and set off to explore the inside of the sea, to film a world that no one had ever seen before. On their journeys, they dove deep into the seascape of plants, green and prickly plants, red, branchy plants, spongy plants, wispy, feathery, swaying plants, slow dancing to the rhythms of the sea. They discovered plants that could feed you, plants that could poison you, plants that looked like fish, and fish that looked like plants. They swam with giant whales, hitched rides on sea turtles, and made friends with porpoises with shining eyes and smiling faces. They filmed fierce and frightening sharks, so strange and dangerous Jacques and his crew had to build cages, not for the sharks, but for themselves, so that they could make movies without being eaten. Oops, and look. The cameras captured camouflage scorpionfish, ugly as toads with poisonous spines, dorados, brilliant, shining fish that glowed the colors of emeralds, sapphires and rubies, checkerboard fish with red and white cheeks from head to tail. Deep down, they discovered a kingdom of giant rays, fish that fly through the water with wings that swim. They came face to face with a fish as big as a truck, with long fangs, lips like giant trees, and huge saucer eyes. They called it the truckfish. On the bottom, they found pink ghost crabs and eyes on long stalks, buried so deep in the sand they looked like a garden of eyes. and flute fish with heads like horses and bodies the shapes of tubes sticking out of rocky openings like pencils in a cup. Everywhere the Calypso went, Jacques and his crew made films of what they saw. Films that played in movie theaters. Films that played on TV. Millions of people all over the world discovered the wonders of the sea for the very first time with Jacques, Philippe, Didi, and their adventurous crew. After Jacques spent most of his life making movies about the sea, he saw something happening, something shocking. Plants that used to be alive, healthy, were being poisoned. Fish were sick and dying. Jacques saw that people, without realizing it, were slowly killing the sea and its creatures by dumping garbage and poisonous chemicals into the ocean he loved so much. Jacques knew what he had to do. He had to make movies to warn people, movies to save the sea. So Jacques' films allowed millions of people to discover the world under the sea. Why do you think Jacques wanted to share what he saw and learned with others all over the world? For the same reason why I like to teach. Jacques also spoke to presidents, to kings and queens, to people all over the earth, asking them to help save our oceans, our planet. And he spoke to children. Jacques dreamed that someday it would be you exploring worlds never seen, never imagined. Whole new worlds, silent and shimmering. Worlds that are now yours to discover, to care for, and to love. So Jacques was very concerned about pollution in the oceans and worked and had to make it better, worked hard to make it better. Why do you think this was so important to him? Why do you think the pollutions in the ocean were so important to Jacques? Now, a couple things that I'd like to say about Jacques Cousteau is that Jacques Cousteau was the world's first marine biologist, which is a pretty big deal because my father is a marine biologist. So Jacques Cousteau is the world's first marine biologist. He also invented scuba diving. So we can thank Jacques Cousteau for being able to go scuba diving. And you know that you can go on YouTube and on Netflix and Amazon, and you can watch all these documentaries about the ocean. Well, before Jacques Cousteau, you couldn't see things like that. So he's the one that did it. So Jacques' early life led him to explore the ocean and make films about what he saw that he shared with the world. How do you think his early life influenced his adult life? So let's look back and see what he was like as a kid. So you see Jacques here playing with water, and he was wondering why ships floated, why he floated, why rocks sank. So you see here he had a fascination for the ocean already. And he also read a story about a man who hid underwater by breathing through a long tube. And he wanted so hard to breathe underwater. And did he achieve that goal? Yes, he did. Also, he spent days experimenting and creating. So that helped him become a great inventor like he did with scuba diving. And then he loved to make movies as a child. So how did that influence his adulthood? Did he make movies as an adult? He sure did. So we've talked about what makes a person a good role model. So what are some things about Jacques Cousteau that make him a good role model for others? So think about good qualities to have in a person. You know that he's smart, he's determined, he cares about others, he wants to educate others about the environment, right? So what was important about Jacques' life and what he did? What do you think was a big deal that he did? And why would Jennifer Byrne write a biography about his life?